Hi, this is Paul from globaltradingsoftware.com. Trading pullbacks using Fibonacci is a very common practice. Can be quite difficult because really traders should be understanding what the stochastic's doing as well, and there's overlaps of fib extensions, fib retracements. Which pivots do you take? Let's have a look at what would be on a normal trader's chart without technology. Okay, so it looks complicated, and it is, because one of the things a lot of traders have problems with is, do we take this pivot for the start of the retracement? Do we take this double bottom? Do we take both? Where are those overlaps to measure that pullback and say, yes, that's now going to go long? We look at those overlaps for targets as well from fib extensions. Is this a pullback? Is it tradable, that pullback? Where do we take all of these measurements from for the next pullback? Is that tradable? Where are those overlaps for that support for that pullback? Lots of questions, and a lot of gurus out there will give you slightly different answers, and in reality there's some very set rules that we should look at there, and those will include the stochastic, oversold, overbought zones. Do we get false breakout stochastics here in the overbought zone, so we denote a really strong trend? You know, do we ignore those particular pullbacks because they haven't pulled back in the oversold zone, for example? Lots of things going off on a chart that you really should understand. Now, technology designed to take that work away makes things a lot simpler, keeps the charter clean, and when an algorithm looks at rules, it won't break them. It'll look at those specific rules. It will combine stochastics. It will look at those fib extension and retracements, those overlaps, where those pullback zones should be, and actually look at those signals. So we look at the XBRAT Slingshot as our driver for that with the XBRAT software solutions. So the Slingshot looks for an initial move, the pullback, and then Slingshot into the direction of the main trend when it's trending. We have the heat map, which gives us that confirmation of that signal, and we have, and again this is for NinjaTrader, we have the guardian zones, because we also need to know where those support and resistance zones are to help us with that trade and make sure there's fresh air. So now the same chart but with software on it. Okay, so I'm just going to move that out of the way. My ugly mug keeps getting in the way. So we have our Slingshot, which puts three support zones in there. Those are fib retracements from the right pivots that we discussed just recently, and it gives you these target zones as well. We have the bias depth heat map under here, which is looking up 6 different time frames and looking at the bias. So we need that, and it's a confirmation tool. And then we have these support and resistance zones really from the guardian zones, which are automated and looks on multiple time frames. It puts them all on the same chart. It's basically to keep you safe. So we can see here we've got a confluence support zone where the price action just tips on there and starts to move away. We then get a buy signal, and again the XBRAT Slingshot denotes that that's the pullback zone that we should be looking at here. This is the pivot that this is the pullback that we should be trading. All 6 time frames are green, so we've got confirmation. We haven't got a lot of fresh air. We've got this confluence resistance zone right where our long entry should be. Sensibly, you would enter a little later when it breaks through that resistance zone. Momentum keeps going through the next resistance zone, and away we go. Now, remember those pullback zones on the first chart, which is this chart. You see how the Slingshot doesn't even recognize those because it doesn't meet the rules, and the same with this one. The next one, it does, however. The type 1 buy, all 6 time frames are green, no resistance up above. We're going to add to our trade at this point on this copper trade. The Slingshot also prints, and this is adjustable in the settings, your trailing stop position there. So this trade is approximately 100 ticks with 2 contracts in the end. So your average contract size because of these two entries would be about 70 ticks for two contracts. Great trade, very simple, and that's when it's trending. So we do get sort of trend failures as well, and we can trade those. I'm going to look on a chart now for oil and give you some more examples with the slingshot. So this time we've got a confluence support zone here. So I can tell by the colours we've got 60, 30, 15 minute and even a daily support zone there. So it bounces off there, and this red pullback zone fails. Okay, there's no signal to go short at this point. However, when it breaks through this 60-minute support and resistance zone, we get a type 3 buy, which is the trend failure signal for the slingshot. And then we can see there's lots of fresh air up until this next confluence resistance zone, and the trading stop gets printed all the way up until we actually then hit that resistance zone from the guardian zones, and it starts to find some really strong resistance there. We don't take this type 1 sell because if you look down the bottom, we've got hardly any red in the bias depth heat map. So there's no we're already in the long anyway, but there's no confirmation from that tool. We're not going to take this buy signal. We're not going to add to our trade at this point because we're not going to go long into this resistance. This is what the guardian zones are there for. They're there to keep you safe. That's why they're called guardian zones. So this great long trade, now we start to come back down. So we get a type 3 signal at this point here. So we've had a trend all the way up to the top of this big resistance zone. We're starting to come back. We do get a type 3 signal here. We haven't got the confirmation from the bias depth heat map, but some of our traders using this would see this resistance holding and this turning back down as an early entry, an aggressive entry. Don't want to do that. We then move down. It pulls back. The slingshot recognizes that the pullback, actually we get a type 2 or a type 1 sell signal at this point. It meets the criteria for two different types of, a couple of candles apart, but they are it meets the criteria for that pullback for a type 2 and a type 1 sell. We're 5 out of 6 on the bias depth heat map here. Remember, we've got a trend failure here. This would be a sensible place to enter. We then get another type 1 sell after another pullback, which meets the rules of the algorithm. All 6 time frames are red at this stage, so there are opportunities to trade all the way down here. So first trade for me would be the type 2 sell because I've already had the type 3 trend failure. We've pulled back against that, met all the criteria and all the rules for the algorithm. It's printed that signal. Got 5 out of 6 confirmation. Got lots of fresh air to the next 60-minute support zone. That's my first entry. My second entry would be after the next pullback. Type 1 sell. All 6 time frames are red, giving that confirmation, and we wait. So we're 2 contracts in this trade, and again those trailing stop are printed by the slingshot and eventually take out that profit. So 2 different types of trades, different instruments, but again very it's understanding that trading pullbacks and trend failures with fibs can be very complex, and people have different ideas, and we should look at false breakout stochastics. We should look at fib retracements, extensions, overlaps of those to give us a good set of rules to measure those pullbacks and trade them. Technology, the XBRAT slingshot, allows that to happen, and the algorithms do not break the rules. There's set rules from me for 20 years experience of trading to actually get you those right types of trades. But then we add a little bit of extra software for that confirmation. Very important with that bias depth heat map. And of course, we don't go long into resistance, so we don't go short into support. So we need fresh air, and those guardian zones help us there. So for that, we have a special edition for the slingshot, and that will include 6 months access to the slingshot, 3 months to the guardian zones, and we're going to throw in the VWAP Predator for a month for you to trial as well. Some great trading opportunities there. It's a special edition. Check out the link below. Ninja Trader users only. We only provide this for NinjaTrader purely because other platforms aren't sophisticated enough to handle the logic of those algorithms that we just talked about. So check out the link below. Hopefully this helps. Trading those pullbacks with Fibonacci can be a lot simpler with technology, but also get those trend reversals and trend failures as well.